With the front page of the PD, why Uhuru has stalled on 41 new judges, integrity queries talk naming of the judicial officers, with one of the nominees being linked to Akasha's brother's drug case, even as concerns on ethnic balance come into play. That's what's on the front page of your People Daily as you get up this morning. The Daily Nation's front page, the inside workings of Uhuru's new state. The president waged a war on corruption and weakened old structure. He talks about, and this is a quote that they have in the Daily Nation, there are two people who are determined to slay the dragon of sleaze. When they come for you, do not call me. Those are his words, and of course right there, we're looking at all the president's men, so to speak. Nzioka Waita, head of the PDU at that particular point. Matiang'i, CS Fred Matiang'i, of course, there. Raila Odinga also in there. DCI boss George Kinoti and DPP boss Nordin Haji, as they're talking about presidential delivery unit, provincial administrators, taming Raila, war on corruption, and new policy. Some of the plans that Uhuru has in terms of the legacy that he lived, and now he'll actually make sure he effects that. Front page of the Standard, Ruto vows to teach Raila a lesson in Kibra. DP promises to deliver Kibra seat, seen as Odinga's stronghold to Jubilee, throws more challenges in path of the BBI drive. So that's still a hot topic of discussion as far as the Standard is concerned. Front page of the Star, Harambes to require licenses. If this bill goes through, proposed law that is going to be debated, organizers will need vetting and approval before they get it. Donors must declare gifts and source of cash to KRA as well. So more accountability if that goes through. And we'll be talking about that definitely right here. And then front page of the Business Daily. KRA spies identify rich 250 billion shilling tax evaders. Taxman tells MP's agency has contacted the wealthy. They suspect are not paying right taxes according to the records they have as far as their cars and electricity is concerned. So KRA upping the ante as far as getting that money needed for public expenditure, and that's where they're going. 250 billion shillings, quite a bit. But now, like I said, introducing my panel once again. Mark Buchachi, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Karibu sana.
Why are you not mentioning I was the first in studio?
I was about to do that. You see? Okay, fine, we shall do this again. It needs to be noted that Mark was the first person in this studio this morning. So that is done.
Yes.
In full disclosure.
Yes, I'd like to refund Ben his alarm
the alarm clock.
Yes, it is
it is evident actually the alarm clock is overworking.
A very good morning to you, Mark. And an applause from the real Mark as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Executive Director at Siasa Place. And of course, Ben, have you been given back your alarm clock?
He says he has just indicated he will refund it.
He might not need it.
He needs it for keeps.
Okay, of course. So since we're here, let's jump into the big stories of the day. Yes. Let's start off with the front page of the PD talking about why Uhuru has stalled on 41 new judges. We're talking about integrity issues at a place where not only do the judges have to be, seen as, people of high integrity, but also have to be people of high integrity. Mm-hmm. And let's just, marry these two issues. The fact that with the PD, they're not really talking about the judges in this particular story. When you go on to page 4 and 5, they're talking about 25 legislators who are facing an integrity crisis as well. So you're looking at the legislature, you're looking at the judiciary, and we ask ourselves, okay, fine, these are the people who make the laws, and these are people who effect the judgment, and we're here wondering why we are in the state that we are in. Absolutely. How do you move forward from this? Because as far as State House is concerned, they're saying there's no issue here. There's no deadline the president has in terms of when he needs to, formalize this particular issue. Yes. But people are sitting back and saying, no, we can see more than meets the eye on this one, Ben.
It's really unfortunate, Jeff, that over the years, we have normalized impunity and corruption. Actually, it is like a standard operating practice in general public service. And if you remember very well, when Kiraitu Murungi was appointed the first Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, he embarked on a very elaborate effort of what he called the radical surgery of the judiciary. Unfortunately, much later when you dig through what the judiciary has been in this country, despite the fact that it's supposed to be a key cog in the delivery of criminal justice and justice to Kenyans, it has been the opposite. corruption has been rampant and rife in judiciary to unprecedented levels. You remember even much later when the former Deputy Chief Justice Kalpana Rawal was exiting office. You remember very serious integrity issues were brought up about her career in the past as a lawyer and as a junior judicial officer. You remember the cases of Justice Tunoi and many others. So you can actually agree that it is almost impossible today to find a completely corrupt-free Kenyan. That is the dilemma.
So you have to choose the best out of the bad that
we have to choose the finest of those or the least corrupt of the corrupt, because now it is, and again now it makes it worse because like you see the case with the members of parliament, and this cuts both the Senate and the National Assembly. All of them have serious integrity issues, and it is an exposure of the actual rot in the society. These guys, we only talk about them because they're in the newspapers and they're on TV. Right. But the little things that happen within ourselves, and this actually continues to cement my argument, that I've been listening to people talking about the need for a constitutional referendum. But believe you me, there is nothing wrong with the constitution we have. If we actually implemented the constitution we have currently, then we wouldn't even be having these characters in leadership, be it in the judiciary or in politics or any other spheres. So what we are suffering from is an acute moral crisis as a country.
Let me jump on that as well, and have Nirima jump in on it as well, because we're talking about, he said if we implement the constitution as is, this whole referendum talk would be out the window. The constitution, we have chapter 6, they shout from the high heavens, oh, integrity, integrity, but you look at all of these leaders, and then you look at that chapter and you're like, then why is it even there? Let's just scrap it. Whoever who can get in, gets in.
We shouldn't scrap it. But I do agree with Ben in terms of we are lacking in implementation. And a lot of people think that I've done law, and I haven't. But I've researched quite a bit, especially when we talk about our judiciary, especially the US legal systems. And Lady Justice is blindfolded. And that's because the law is supposed to be what is truth or clear. And your eyes are not supposed to deceive you to make judgments based on incentives. And so when we have a judiciary system that we can see is tainted, it's worrying for the average individual, because it means that you have to have access to resources or capital to be able to feel that the law works for you. And it's a scary situation to be in. And even when we look at our judges and why they wear those white wigs and things like that, and it's supposed to portray a sense of not just, you're supposed to be above mankind. You're supposed to be able to think above temptations. And I find it interesting that in our country, when we talk about our judiciary, a lot of people don't feel that it's a place that's secure, a place that they feel as a citizen, that I am protected. And there are a lot of issues around that. As much as we don't have all judges or all people involved in the legal system are terrible, there are just so many corrupt and broken systems within it, and even the underfunding when it comes to it. And we've had Mariga talk about that a lot. But the issue that we need to be able to remember is the fact that there are people in this country who do well. And there are people who do want to follow the constitution. But it doesn't mean that when we live in a country where there are few others who are doing wrong, that we scrap it from our constitution.
Right. And as Ben has alluded to this, Mr. Mark, is the fact that we are right now having the task of choosing the best out of a bad bunch. We're not looking for the best, just this is what we have, let's deal with it. And for a country going to the system where you want to have faith, when you take your case to this particular court, you shall get justice. Is with such headlines, will you really have the faith you need in our judiciary? When you're looking at the fact that even the president is postponing to make a decision because he's looking at the judges that will come in and he's not too sure.
Well, the question that we need to ask yourself is, if someone tells you that I'm buying your car, I am from the United States, I'm from Germany, and I'm a Kenyan, who are you trusting to buy it without a contract? For sure it's not a Kenyan. That's the real problem. I always say that Kenya is a country of thieves and thieves in waiting. If you look at how we applaud those people who broke into an airport to steal money, it will tell you that the moral fiber of this country is people are only angry at the corrupt because it is not their turn yet. And that is the key problem. That even those people in the judicial system, magistrates who want to become judges, or police officers who want to become OCSs, or even junior officers in government who want to become directories and secretaries, are all doing it for the sole purpose of access to corruption. That is the mentality of many Kenyans. And I don't blame the president, because the president is at a position where he's trying to fight against corruption. And then, whether he likes it or not, these corrupt suspects land at the door of the judiciary. Now, we saw a judge in Kiambu offer anticipatory bail when he was on sick off. The guy was dying. He would rather give anticipatory bail and possibly die on his way to court than fail to do so. That should tell you the mentality that we need to be careful about. But what is the remedy? The remedy in this country is very simple. We need to ask ourselves, who are our heroes? For as long as our heroes remain prison prefects, corruption architects, and tribal kingpins, for as long as that is the case, we will continue to be a corrupt country. This is a country where no one congratulates anyone in government for saying, hey, listen, I was given a budget of 2 billion and I did the work for 1.2 billion. I saved 800 million. There's no congratulations. There's no award for a guy who works in an accounts department or a procurement department and has not been corrupt for the last 20 years. Instead, what do we find in this country? You find that in parliament, many of the people who are there are mentioned in corruption. You find that among governors, many of them are self-confessed prison prefects. Those are the issues that we have. For as long as bad behavior is what gets you ahead in this country, we are in trouble.
And even as we're talking about that particular trouble, let's also look at the Daily Nation as we get into that, because we're having a president who said that he really wants to wage this war on corruption. He's restructured his A-team, so to speak, in order to do that. But it seems like the more he restructures, the more corruption fights back.
It's not actually an issue of corruption fighting back. Like particularly when you look at the issue of judges, in my view, it is doublespeak from the president in terms of alluding that I am not appointing these guys because they have integrity issues. Yet his cabinet is full of people who have been spearheading some of the worst plunder this country has ever been taken through. It is almost 2 years since Kiunjuri messed up this country in terms of food reserves. Nothing has happened to him. So it is dishonest of the president to come to us now and start telling us, no, you know, these judges are too corrupt, I can't appoint them. We have
to argue and say when they were brought, he made Kamau step aside and a host of others.
No.
And the judiciary is the one that's lacking in terms of taking it.
It has to be a consistent and it has to be a consistent and a continuous effort. It cannot be one-off and you think now because you've just removed 3 or 4 or 5 guys, then that's the end of it. There are very serious integrity issues that have continued to be raised amongst members of his cabinet. We have issues even touching as recently as the Ruaraka land saga, where the government bought government land, and many such cases. And those are things that were spearheaded by people who are very close to the president. If indeed it was a genuine war on corruption, then that would be it. But now moving on in terms of the reorganization, the only challenge that the president faces today is the fact that he slept too much through his first term, and a lot of things went so wrong, it is now almost impossible for him to recover ground.
So how, if he were to recover ground, where does he make the most impact?
It is, now it is almost everything has gone wrong. And I like actually a publication I read the other day, because when we started complaining about the investment in mega infrastructure, people used to consider us as anti-government and people who are anti-development. But it takes very basic brain work to be able to see something that is viable or not. But now, when it comes to restructuring, like we are talking about the Presidential Delivery Unit, for example, this is an area that should have been from the outset designed to be able to have a synergy synergy, working with all the departments and ministries to be able to identify what are our core areas. And why this has never been able to take off, because even most of the projects that they have been trying to execute don't have a sound plan on execution. I'll give you an example. The Big Four agenda. It is 2 years down the line. Actually, this October it is going to be 2 years since the president was voted twice in 2017. And there's nothing to show for it. The reason is there is no coordination between the departments to be able to understand. And even the designers of those big words, you know, there's a problem in this country and people coming up with just fancy words. There's a problem with the designers of those fancy words and practicability, because from the outset, there was no roadmap in terms of how are we going to finance this. Then who is tasked with doing what? So everybody is running around. Now suddenly what we are just seeing is people coming up with billboards along roads and telling us, oh, you see, this is Big Four agenda. I would want to challenge the president. And now he has actually the PS who was in charge. The PS Treasury today was in charge of Vision 2030, Dr. Muya and Mwai Kibaki. Let him have a sitting with that fella and understand what it took to build that document. It's not a very big document, the Vision 2030 document. But that document was, and the president actually has the Economic Advisory Council. That document took in a lot of research and took in professionals and experts from different fields, then come up with something. You'd rather even focus on one, be it housing, be it manufacturing, because now manufacturing, we have completely lost it, and I'll talk about it later, where we will never recover. Then focus on just one issue and run with it for the next 3 years. This idea of running around with everything at the same time is not working.
Nerima, we're talking about a president who has now, it's almost 2.5 years to go in order to firm up his legacy, so to speak. What one thing should he hit and say, you know what? This is what I'm going to do, and it's the only thing I'm going to focus on. Some people have just said, you know what, forget the Big Four. Just deal with corrupt. Just forget everything else you said. Just deal with this one thing. From where you stand and from the people you're interacting with from Siasa, please, what's the one thing you should do and say, this is the one and only thing I'm going to leave as my legacy now?
You know, it's interesting that our president has actually received global recognition as the youth ambassador, the global youth ambassador, and I'm in that space. And even more recently on universal healthcare. And so when you say what's that one thing that he can do, and you say not the Big Four, I actually think it should be one of the Big Four and implementing it well, even if it's access to healthcare, because that is a social right in Article 43. But because of the corruption, and that's why people feel that he should focus on corruption. You cannot see the Big Four being implemented. And so it still remains as a root issue. And that's still something that he needs to work toward. And I agree with Ben, where he looks like where he's doing a lot more toward the end of his term. And even though for Kibaki's administration was known for fighting corruption and trying to, and even though he temporarily fired some people, people felt like, okay, we're seeing something is actually changing, and departments being built of anti-corruption. And right now, people still feel like it's the same script, but it's the same monkeys but a different jungle. Right.
Mark, from where you stand, even as you go into the break, we're talking about the president's delivery as far as he's concerned, with what is left of his term. If you sat in a room with him and you just told him, this is one thing you need to focus on, what would that be?
You know, here's the funny thing. I'm not one of those proponents who thinks the president should focus on one thing, because indeed it is impossible for a president to focus on one thing. It's like going to your house and saying, by the way, we are just buying a car this month. No one asks for food, no one asks for anything else. It's impossible, because the things that the president needs to balance are many. Now, the issue is there are soft issues, software issues, soft issues affecting this country, and then there are hard issues. So let's look at the hard issues to begin with. The housing agenda is on track. Why is it on track? If you go to Park Road down the road, the houses actually being built. In fact, some of them will be ready for occupancy October 21st. There are 4 counties that have piloted universal healthcare. It has teething problems, but it is there. In October, again, most likely it will be launched across the country. Manufacturing may be lagging behind, but it needs to be. It's something that can be corrected. The other thing that can be corrected easily, and it is such a shame that Golana Kulalu failed, food security in this country, which now brings me to the software side, the soft issues. The president cannot do any of the big four agenda if he does not deal with two vices in this country, which we dearly love. Number one is corruption, and number two is our unity as a nation.
Okay.
Without those two foundations, the president can't deliver. So my advice to him would be, fight against corruption and deliver unity to this country, and that will allow him to deliver the big four agenda. Because after all, what is hindering it? Isn't it corruption?
Okay, we'll leave it at that particular point as we take a short break. We are back on the other side. What do you feel is the way forward as far as this is concerned? You've heard some people feeling disillusioned and like, you know what, forget the big four, forget the vision that we had for 2030 before you came in, just fight corruption. That's all we want. Seems a bit more complex than that, but we'd like your views on the news as well. Tweet us at K24 TV. You can also SMS us on 21222. Take a short break. We're back on the other side. We talk about the BBI and also how Kibra campaigns are heating up by the day, by the week. What does that portend as we move forward? That and plenty more. This is K24 This Morning.